Hey everyone, this is Scott Hawes, and I am going to make an attempt to tell you the story about how we had to build a bridge on our property so that we could access our home with our vehicles. And rather than trying to explain it several times to a lot of different people, I just thought I'd make a little video. And you know how they say a picture or video is worth 1,000 words, and hopefully this will be helpful for someone who may be trying to figure out what to do if they have a problem with a low water crossing and need to find a solution for a water crossing to access their property. And so let me back up a little bit and tell you a little bit of my story and my family and how we came to this place where we live now. In 2008, I moved to Hannibal, Missouri, and I became the head wrestling coach at Hannibal University. I coached for 12 years. But when we moved here in August of 2008, it was just my wife, my oldest son, Austin, and our second son, Chase. And we loved Watertown, Wisconsin, had all kinds of friends there. But it was apparent that God had opened up a door of opportunity for me to coach at Hannibal Grange University, helping start a wrestling program and getting that underway. And so we moved here, and we didn't know where we were going to live. And we started driving through the Hannibal area looking for a house or possibly some property to buy to build a house on. And we happened to come across this property that we actually own now. But 16 years ago, it was just a pasture. There were no buildings on the property, and it was for sale by owner. And so I called the owner. I found a for sale by owner sign on the side of the road, and it was kicked over. And I called the owner, and he said, "Yeah, drive through the low water crossing, check out the property." And he said, "Give me a call if you're interested." And so Austin, Chase, myself, and Jenny, we all drove our Jeep across the low water crossing, pulled up into the pasture land area. Chase and Jenny stayed down in the pasture area, and Austin and I walked to the top of this hill. There was like an old logging road that went to the top of the hill, and it was pretty open. And we got to the top, and we could look down. We could see through the trees Chase and Jenny down there, and we hollered down at them, and we came back down, and I told Jenny, I want to buy this land. And right where we were standing, I said, we could build a house right here. And Jenny thought I was half crazy, having 2 young sons, and we were talking about having a third child. And eventually Reagan came to us. But at that time, it was just the 2 boys. And I said, hey, we can get a camper, we can build a house right here. And she did not have the vision for that. And so sadly, and from my perspective, we pursued other options, but this property, in my mind, would have been great to raise a family at, with a creek running through it, and a beautiful hill behind it, and just a nice piece of land. And had no idea that 15 years later, that God would lead us back to this property. Fast forward in time, my wife and I decided that we would be open to trying to find a house in the country. We bought a house and we lived in it for 15 years in Hannibal in the city. And we really enjoyed that neighborhood. But we kind of wanted to get out in the country and enjoy some more solitude and peacefulness. And so Jenny found this house that was for sale through like Zillow or something like that. And she said, hey, let's go take a look at it. And come to find out, this house was built in the exact spot that we had visited before, and where I said we should build a house right here. And I didn't realize it until we started driving towards the property that this was the exact house. And when we arrived to look at the house, we drove across our neighbor's bridge, and that was the access to the property. And there was a drive that went through the neighbor's property to the property where this house is. and we talked to the realtor. Realtor said there's only one problem with this property. One, it's only 90% or 95% completed. And the other problem is that there's not an existing easement for the property. And so there was a little bit of a dispute going on, and so I had a conversation with the property owner that originally owned the property and where the land would have, or the easement would have to go through. And we came to an agreement, and everything worked out. And the agreement was this, that as soon as we would buy the property, that we would start to work on a low water crossing across Mills Creek, and that we would, as soon as we get that low water crossing, the neighbor would remove access to this property from his property, but he would grant me an easement through the top of his property, in the corner of his property, so that we could access the highway that this property is located on. And so that was agreeable by us and by them, and we were happy to purchase this property, and we got a really good deal on the house, and we thought, man, what a blessing. It's a brand new home. And so as soon as we got settled in and started moving in, I started clearing a spot through the creek area and started to build a low water crossing across Mills Creek. And I had the help of Brother Bill Hafner, and he was such a blessing. He brought his tractors over and just helped me make the bridge across, and then, or the land bridge across. And then we started to form up the sides of that land bridge because water would erode, and we needed to make sure that we protected that low water crossing. So we start out with one side, and it was a little nerve-wracking because it costs money, obviously, to put the concrete in and the culverts and everything. But this land bridge, or this low water crossing, it lasted all winter long. It went through the fall, we went through the winter, and I was really nervous about, whether it would get washed out or if it would erode away, or if we would slip off into the creek with our vehicles with the snow and the ice. But it was a blessing for the whole time that it was in place. And it was a very beautiful view too, as well, when you see the different times of year and season. And so this is some video of me taking care of some of the brush that we created when we cleared out the trees and everything like that. And so it was just a lot of hard work, but it was a blessing. So springtime came around, and we developed some problems. The volume of water that was needing to go through those tubes was greater than what the tubes could handle, and water washed out the land bridge, and that happened the first time, and I was kind of disappointed. And my neighbor actually told me, he said, you know what, this isn't going to work. You need to have a bridge built. You need to build a bridge. And he was absolutely right. But this is what I had resources to do. We were able to take some dirt that was in the backyard, and rock and gravel and clay, and use that. There's a pond starting to be dug, and we're able to use that material to make this land bridge. So all this material was already here on the property. So it was just a matter of getting it in place with a tractor. But you can see that it washed out pretty badly here. And so I decided to try to reinforce it. I had some friends in the community lend a hand, and they donated some gravel and rock and some other materials. And Brother Bill came back over, helped us fill it in. I extended the tubes out by 10 feet, so it actually made it wider. And so we had a very, very big land bridge going across, and I call it a low water crossing, but basically it was a land bridge. But it didn't work. And so what we did was, after we got the gravel in place, we put some bigger rock on the side, and then we concreted the other side. So both sides were there was concrete on both sides, and then eventually I was going to cap the entire thing. And I thought, well, maybe that'll give us a fighting chance. And so you can see the big rock there, and Chase and I were able to use his little mini excavator and that he had, and we're able to put all that rock into place. And we got the cement put on, and man, it looked really good. I was really confident, and I was gonna in a few weeks maybe try to cap it with concrete. There's a picture of our vehicle on top of it. And then the floods came, the rains came, the flood came, and it totally wiped out all of our hard work and effort. That's actually Jenny filming me. I'm on the other side of the creek, and I came home from work, and man, my heart sunk. And brother Bill Brooks stopped by and said, man, I'm so sorry to see this. You need to build a bridge, brother. I said, you are right. We need to build a bridge. And so I started making plans and started looking at the devastation afterwards. And I came to the conclusion that all of my attempts of making this work in a less expensive way, it was just futile. I was fighting against creation, and I wasn't going to win. And so we had some fun with it. You know, Reagan, like she floated in the water a little bit, and we had a great. We tried to make this into kind of like a learning experience for us all, but man, we had to learn the hard way. So we had some friends come over, and we talked, and Jones Excavation and we have some history going back to when I was interim pastor at Durham Baptist Church. I got to know their family really well, and have a lot of great memories with their family, but they started a business a few years back, and we met together and we came up with a plan. And so the first step was we're going to recreate a land bridge with all the material that was there, and that would allow their trackhoe to get in there and do some work and make some big pylons into the ground on either end. And so the work began, and they did a wonderful job. These steel beams, they go all the way down to the bedrock. The holes are about 8 feet deep, and what we did was they drove those beams into the ground. They made a framework for the rebar, and then we put a form around the top so that we had some elevation to the bridge, and the bottom of the bridge is actually above the floodplain, and so we wanted to be sure that if the water did ever get up, that it would pour over into the floodplain before it touched the bridge. And so that was a pretty good strategy. I was really happy and pleased with that, and they did a really good job. They had all the equipment, all of the things that we needed to do the job right, and it was really neat to see all this come together. We used some washout rock from our local cement plant here. It was free, and that was a great resource for us, because even though we were confident that our foundation and our pillars, that all that was going to be really good, we wanted to make sure that none of that would ever be undermined. So we lined both sides of the creek in front of the support pillars with those big humongous chunks of concrete, and so we had it all put in place, and we had to do some prep, getting the metal ready to weld and be ready for the bridge to sit on. So what we decided to do was go with a rail car, a box car that carried vehicles. It has 70 tons of weight capacity. It might be a little bit less because of where we put the supports, but we felt like that would be the best solution. And so we had a big crane come in. It was a 225-ton crane. It could lift that much, and I ordered the bridge, and we tried to do everything we could do to make sure everything was in place, and The first date that it was supposed to arrive, the trucking company had some difficulty getting it here in time, so we ended up having to reschedule, and that's a whole story in and of itself. But we came to this conclusion that the best route for a almost 90-foot long bridge would be to come down Johnson Street and then back up Route O until to drive backwards with the semi truck and the trailer all the way up to our house. And so that's probably about a half a mile of distance. And got some footage here of us actually watching the semi truck back up. This is in reverse, and we're driving forward, trying to keep the road closed, traffic back. We shut down the highway, but people were still trying to get through, and the highway was totally blocked. And it was just kind of silly that they were trying to get through because there was no way through, and we had road closed signs and everything. So, but anyway, you can see the semi truck driving in reverse here, back in the bridge, and then eventually we arrive at our house, and this trailer is massive. It is a massive trailer. If you notice, it's upside down. The trailer is upside down on the semi truck, and Jenny and Reagan and our friend Molly are here, and Dana, her husband. And we are watching this railroad car that's upside down. They're going to lift it up with this massive crane, and they're going to flip it over, and then they're going to maneuver it in place. And the excavator will grab one end and will help guide it and pull it across. But I've got this in a fast forward speed, because this was a kind of a long, tedious process, but it's kind of neat to see the process and how we were able to get this bridge in place. In a minute, they'll lower it, and then they'll flip it over. And thankfully, they missed my mailbox. I'm sparing you the dialogue that is in the video, but in the video I'm talking about, man, I hope they missed my mailbox, and they did a really good job missing the mailbox. We probably could have moved the mailbox, but they didn't need to because they had a big enough crane. They could just lift it right over. But they're gonna lay it on this pile of washout that's there, and then they'll disconnect two of the lines, and then they'll lift up, and the bridge will be flipped over. And they'll reattach the lines on the end, and then the excavator will come and move the bridge in place across the creek. Here's a picture of us commemorating the bridge. Jenny and Reagan and myself were so happy for this day. We spent much of the summer walking up and down the creek bed and had to park our vehicles on the other side of the creek because we didn't have access to our house. And so this was quite the trial in our life. We weren't sure how this was all going to come together, but thankfully God provided. We had some of our church family came together and put some funds together and paid for a majority of this bridge. There was some expense that we had to pay, but nothing compared to what our church family did to be a blessing to us. And it's very humbling to see what God does through His people when they're trying to honor and serve Him, and what a blessing it was to be on the receiving end of that, obviously. But this was something that only God could bring together, and all these parts here moving and working. What a blessing it's been to see God's hand working in our families.